Good morning to everybody. Today we are discussing research methodology. In fact, my initial idea was to discuss with you various ways of doing Buddhist research, and then we discussed textual research, how to do. However, I thought before proceeding, I should discuss with you some preliminary matters and then come back to modes of or various ways of doing research subsequently. So I will be discussing with you knowledge and means of knowledge today, and also in another session I will be discussing with you the nature of scientific knowledge, because science is basically the main means of knowledge today. So we really go by scientific discoveries, and the science has become the accepted means of knowledge. So therefore we will look at the nature of scientific knowledge after this discussion. So today I will be looking at with you the knowledge and the means of knowledge, under which basically we will be discussing rationalism and empiricism. So I think to begin with, this introduction will be useful. Okay. And, now, one important thing for us to discuss will be the question, what is knowledge? Now, usually we talk about knowledge, but we don't think that we should define what knowledge is. We talk about knowledge quite a lot, and then we started this series of discussions with the question how to produce knowledge, how to produce new knowledge, what is new knowledge in Buddhist research. So we were raising these questions, but we should have also raised the question, what is knowledge? What do we mean by knowledge? Now, basically we do not try to define what knowledge is, but actually what do we mean by knowledge? Is it information, gathering more and more information, or is it something more than that? We need to think about it. And also, when we look at the Buddhist tradition, we can see that there are several different knowledge indicating terms, and different levels of knowledge we are talking. So therefore, from Buddhist point of view, also it is very important to know what knowledge is. What really does Buddhism mean by knowledge? So therefore, we will spend some time discussing this idea. Now, when we look at Western philosophy, there is basically an idea that knowledge is justified through belief. Now, this view that knowledge is justified through belief is very old. In Plato's dialogues, Plato is the beginning of Greek philosophy, beginning of Western philosophy. So that's, we are talking about roughly about 3rd century BCE. So therefore, fairly early period in beginning of Greek philosophy. Now, Plato have written dialogues. You may have heard about them. And then one of the dialogue is the Theaetetus. One of the dialogue is Theaetetus. Now in these Plato's dialogues, you know that Socrates is the main speaker. Actually, Socrates was Plato's teacher, but then Plato wrote these dialogues. So in the dialogues, Socrates is the main speaker. But when we discuss philosophically, what are the Socrates ideas, what are the Plato ideas, they are some kind of mixed, because it's very difficult to distinguish. So the Plato speaking through Socrates. Okay. Now in this dialogue, Theaetetus, Plato examines this view and rejects it, but it has some interesting aspects of knowledge, truth and justification. Now this idea that knowledge is justified true belief is being discussed in this dialogue, and then having discussed this, he thinks that it is not really knowledge, but that's a different story. But when we look at this view, knowledge is justified true belief, we can see there are two very important things when we think about knowledge. Now, one thing is what we call truth, and then the other thing is justification. Now, when we say, for example, know, we know something, can we know something that is not true? Can we know something that is false? What do you think? Can we say that there is false knowledge? Can we use this term knowledge when something is false? Say there are, we say 10 tables in this room, and then if I say that there are 10 tables in this room, if there are 10 tables in the room, then of course what I am saying is true. And also I can say that I know that there are 10 tables in the room. However, suppose there are only 9 tables in the room, and then if I say that I know that there are 10 tables in the room, will be false. Then do I have a knowledge about how many tables are there in the room? No, because I think that there are 10 tables, whereas there are only 9 tables. So when I say that there are 10 tables, can I say that I have a knowledge about how many? I mean, can we use this word knowledge? Because my information is wrong. It's not truth. But basically, here we are talking about the concept of truth. Now, the concept of truth, the idea of truth itself is also complex, difficult subject. What do we mean by true? Now, of course, the number of tables is a pretty simple thing. We can count number of tables and, so that's pretty simple. But which also means that my statement corresponds to the reality in the room as far as number of tables are concerned. Now, in other words, I say that there are 10 tables in the room. That means a statement. Now, if that statement we say true, if there are 10 tables in the room, it is false if there are no 10 tables in the room, right? But on the other hand, the concept of truth we are using is simply what we call, in the philosophical discussions, what we call correspondence. My statement corresponds to the reality. My statement corresponds to the fact. The fact is that there are 9 tables. However, if I say that there are 10 tables, then my statement does not correspond to the truth. Pretty simple, right? So that's basically the idea. However, this concept of truth also is complex because sometimes the truth is not that simple. Truth is not that simple because there can be situations where we cannot really count things and simply say that okay, this is the case. Now say, for example, suppose something happened on the road when you are going in the vehicle, some kind of the accident. Now 2 people or 3 people must be saying 2 or 3 different stories about it. Now, what story is true? Who is telling the truth? Now, that's a fairly complex situation, right? I mean, if we ask the number of tables in the room, we can simply count and then nobody can dispute it. But about this road accident, people will be disputing. One person says something and the other person says something different. And then, actually, I'm not talking about a person lying, but simply one person sees something from one side, the other person sees from the another side, and then both people seem to be saying truth. But then the problem is, what is the truth there actually? Can we decide that simple manner? So there are situations in certain conditions, what is truth is not that simple, okay? Do you see that? So the truth can be again, issue. Now, there are many theories about truth. I'm not going to talk about those things. Maybe if we have time, some other time, we might do that. But basically, there are many theories of truth. So when we say that knowledge is justified through belief, now truthfulness has to be some very important thing. Because you cannot know something false. You cannot use the word know about something false. Anyway, think about it. Can we use the word know when we do not have right information? Now, simple, the situation again, if I say that there are 9 tables in the room, whereas there are 10 tables, then I can't say that I know how many tables are there in the room. I don't have a knowledge. In other words, what I have is misinformation, wrong information, you see. So, truth is an important thing. When we say no, we have to know what is true. What is true can be pretty simple, like number of tables in the room, or it can be fairly complex, like 4 noble truths. We again use the word 4 noble truths, right? But when we use the term 4 noble truths, Chattari Arya Sachani, the concept of truth is fairly complex. They are not simple like this, Why do we call suffering is truth? So, it has to be explained and, maybe even debated with some people. It goes like that. The second is justification. Now, in order for us to say no, it is not sufficient that we know something. We must be also able to justify how we got that knowledge. If we cannot justify, maybe we are saying something just according to what we think. There is no really reason where to justify it. Now, for example, I can say that, with you, you have, 1,000 cats note. And when I say this, it could be true. But on the other hand, if you ask, how do you know it? How can I justify it? I could say that I thought. But what I thought was true simply because you happen to have 1,000 cats not with you. But then if you did not have, then it's going to be false. I just made a lucky guess actually. My guess was true. But it was only a guess, I did not know. Because simple reason is there is no way that I can justify. But justification is something like this. If I say that you have 1,000 cats note with you, then how do you know? Then I can say that when you are taking out things, I saw 1,000 cat note with you. Then of course there is a justification. Justification is I saw it. Right? Justification is I saw it. So it has a strong justification. But then I say that you have 1,000 cats note because somebody else told me that you have. Okay, I have a justification, but that justification is not very strong. So even in the justification, there can be different limits. If I can say that I saw it with my eyes, then of course there's a pretty strong justification to make a knowledge claim. But if I say I heard from somebody, that could be true, that could be false, it depends. So therefore, when we use the word knowledge, we have to, that particular statement has to be true. Very simple idea of truthfulness is to that which corresponds to reality, and then our knowledge claim, we must be able to justify it or show how we got that knowledge. Yeah. In fact, this is why we are talking about the sources of knowledge. In philosophical discussions, we talk about empiricism, we talk about rationalism. Basically, we are talking about how knowledge derived, how we get knowledge. So that's the important question. So this knowledge is justified through belief. In the Theaetetus, Plato examines this view and rejects it because he thinks that knowledge is something more than that. But I think it has some interesting aspects, basically truth and justification. Because in order for something to be knowledge, at least these two things have to be there. Now, when we look at the use of this word, three senses of knowledge. Now, in what sense, in what manner do we use this word knowledge? Now, we can identify three senses of knowledge. Number one will be what is called propositional knowledge. Propositional knowledge is, proposition means statement actually. Proposition means basically statement. So the propositional knowledge is the kind of knowledge that we can state in a sentence, in a word. The kind of knowledge we can state in language. Now, for example, when I say, I can say that I know that. Now, when I say I know that, here we can put something like there are 10 tables in the hall. Now, if you look at carefully, you can see that I know, and then here there is a complete sentence. There are 10 tables in the hall. Now, similar thing. Now, this is actually a proposition. In other words, propositional knowledge is the knowledge that we can state in a statement or sentence or proposition. Now, most of our knowledge come into this, right? Most of our knowledge come into this. When we study, say, history, geography, many subjects, what we do is actually we gather a lot of information. So this information basically comes under this category, I know that. I know that there are 10 tables in the hall. I know that there is academy in Mandalay. I know that there are, the 1 million people in this city, and so on and so forth. So many things. Now, basically, we can also call this some kind of what we call factual knowledge. Factual knowledge. Now, we know facts. Facts means any kind of information is a fact. Now, if there are 10 tables in the hall, that's a fact. If I have a pen in my hand, that's a fact. If there are, like that, if there are 35 people in this room, now that is a fact. Now, there are so many things about the world, right? Depending on what we want to know, anything can be a fact, right? I mean, what I'm trying to show you is, when we talk about the facts, facts become facts for people who are looking for them. Otherwise, we can't say facts are there outside for us to know. It becomes a fact if we want to know that. So we really make facts. Now, in that sense, we can say that the world is full of facts. World is full of things that we should know. So, propositional knowledge is what we call factual knowledge, facts about the world. So, to know about this thing is the propositional knowledge. Now, the word know we use in this particular sense, right? Now, in fact, another way to describe this will be to say that we gather information. We gather facts, also we gather information. Now, for example, when you read the daily newspaper, what do you get? All kinds of information, right? All kinds of information, what people did, where they went, what happened, and then also you get information about economics, the exchange rates, and things like that. But a newspaper is full of information, right? So a newspaper will be a good example for factual knowledge or information or propositional knowledge. Now in our life, we are dealing with a lot of information. In classes, usually we come to know a lot of information. So basically when we use the word knowledge, we are talking about, gathering information. The information that we have gathered. I mean, very often what we use this word is for, basically for this information or facts. So the knowing that is the propositional knowledge. And then we have knowing how. Knowing how means the skills. It can be stated something like that. I know how, we can say, to cook. I know how to what? Wash, dance, so on. Now, what kind of knowledge is this? What is the difference between number 1 and number 2? When I say propositional knowledge, how different is this from propositional knowledge? When I say I know how to cook, does that mean that I can say talk about 15 minutes about cooking, or I can cook? What is the difference between the two? I mean, if you go to a good cook, he will not be able to talk about cooking very much, but he will cook for you. So what is the kind of knowledge why we are using the term I know how to cook, I know how to dance, but actually the word knowledge we are using, not propositional sense, but that is a skill, that is something we can do, right? Although we use the word knowledge, it may not necessarily be propositional. Now, a good carpenter will be able to make a good chair, but if you ask carpenter to explain it, carpenter might not be able to do that. A person who can explain making a chair very well may not be able to make a chair. That's the difference. So a good carpenter will not be able to explain or describe it, but he will do it. Same thing with cooking or anything else. So, but still we use the word know. I know how to cook. I know how to dance. I know how to make a chair. So then we are using the word know not to any kind of propositional knowledge or knowledge that can necessarily, not that it cannot be described by words, it can be described by words, but basically we are talking about a skill. Now in the first sense, propositional sense, what do you know? Then I can state that in a sentence. But in the second sense, if somebody asks, what do you know? I will have to make a chair and show you what I know. I mean, totally different things. Or I have to cook something and show you how to cook. But not really necessarily a account of it or description of that. So you see, the word knowledge is being used in two different senses, right? And then, number 3 would be what we call knowing, direct personal knowledge. For example, I can say something like, I know you. What does that mean? I say, I know you. And then in the first sense, we said, I know that there are a number of chairs or tables in the room. Second is, I know how to do something. But when I say, I know you, we are talking about a different sense of knowledge. There we are talking about more like direct experience. We can say, I know that place. That means I have visited that place. I know what it is. So, we are talking more about the personal experience of somebody. That's a different meaning. I know you. Now, we have similar statements like in one place Buddha says that if you know me, you know the Dhamma. If you know the Dhamma, you know me. Yo Dhammang passati, somang passati. Now, if you see me, you see the Dhamma. Now, there, of course, we are talking about not really looking at a building or something, but knowing the Buddha, knowing the Dhamma will be, again, different from seeing the Buddha. Seeing the Dhamma is different from seeing a building. Right? We are using, they are seeing, knowing in a different sense. I'm just trying to show you, now when we use this term knowledge, three senses of knowledge, so knowing that, and then the skill, also knowing direct personal knowledge. Now, we are using this concept, knowledge, in many different ways. These are 3 different ways we are using the concept. So now, if somebody asks us, okay, what is knowledge? Now you see that, it is not that simple. You cannot give a one-word definition to what knowledge is, right? Can you identify something common to all these things? If you can do that, then you can say, okay, knowledge is this. But on the other hand, what happens is when we say knowledge, we are using it in several different contexts. You understand? Now, this is something very important because we are using words, but we are using the same word. But you can see that when you analyze, you mean different things with the same word. Now, you go to university and get your degree and you are considered to be an educated person. But then somebody goes to a technical school and become a good carpenter or good mechanic. But we try to make a distinction between the two. One person we say educated person. Other person we don't talk about as an educated person. But he is a good mechanic or good carpenter. But on the other hand, it's not very reasonable, right? I mean, one person has a different kind of knowledge. I mean, you will never be able to be a good carpenter only if you have a first degree from a university. Because, that is more like a number one, propositional knowledge. You become a graduate, you become a scholar by knowing lot of things, propositions, things, statements, ultimately. But then you become a good mechanic or good carpenter, not necessarily by propositional knowledge, by acquiring some kind of skill to your life, right? So you are able to do certain things. Now, here lies, some very important distinction. We are using the same word. Now, this should be a good example for you to, in fact, to analyze the words we are using. And then we will see that, we are using these things in several different ways, several different contexts, okay? Now, from that we will go to the Buddhist concept. On the one hand, in Buddhism we have Sanya, Vijnana, Panya. And then we have Sutamaya, Chintamaya, and Bhavanamaya Panya. Now again you can see that the similar words have been used. Now if you look at the first category, you can see that all the three terms, Sanya, Vijnana, Panya, you see, Sanya, Vijnana, Panya, all these words have same root, Nya, to know, right? Nya, to know. But we say Sanya, Vijnana, and Panya. And there are many similar terms. Say we have another term called Parinya. So, from this we have the verb called from Sanya, Sanjanati. From this we have Vijanati. From this we have Pajanati. From this we can have Parijanati. What do all these things mean? Do they mean the same? But on the one hand, all these have the same root, basically Nya, to know. But then Sanya, Vijnana, Panya, according to Abhidharma, what is Sanya, Vijnana, Panya? What is the difference between the three? There is a distinction, Sanya, Vijnana, Panya. So according to Abhidhamma, Sanya is the very basic knowledge. Vijnana is little better knowledge. Panya is the comprehensive knowledge. Like, you know about it, right? About the coin, there is a simile in the Abhidhamma. So if you give a coin to a child, the child knows few things about what you can, do with that. And then if you give it to an ordinary person, that person will know little better. It's like Vijnana, Vijanati. And a person, who is an economist, somebody, will know almost everything about it. So that is Pajanati. So Sanya, Vijnana, Panya. Now there you see the according to that different degrees of knowledge. A child knows little, the adult knows little more, and the expert knows even more. So there we are talking about the different, the quantity is different, or the levels of knowledge are different, right? But that is one. But basically what is Sanya means? Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana. Is the Sanya is the same or Sanya is different? When you say Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana, Sanya there is not really that child's knowledge like thing. Sanya Sanjanati is basically, Sanjanati means what we see, what we hear, what we get from our sensory instruments. Or in other words, sanjanati means sensory perception. Whatever we get through our senses is we call sanya. Okay? Now, sanya, now vijnana. Rupa Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. So the Vijnana is different. Vijnana is what we consider to be the consciousness, the person's conscious aspect. Now there you can see Sanya is one and Vijnana is completely another. Right? And then the Pajanati, Panya, Pajanati is used in the discourses again to give a particular meaning. Janati and Pajanati are different. I examined one time dissertation written by a student in one of our universities. His research was how this word Pajanati is used in the Tripitaka. Now, he has examined maybe several hundred places where Pajanati has been used. Now, that was a very interesting research. You are simply taking one verb and looking at the all different contexts where Pajanati has been used. That's very interesting, because when you see that, when you see all these instances, like couple of hundred instances, then you can see certain patterns of that. Okay? But when you just see it here and there, you don't get that kind of sense. But when you have all these instances getting together and examine, then you will have. But that's a good research somebody can do. You take one term, this term, how it's been used. We can do it for Vijanati. Somebody did it for Pajanati or Sanjanati. Now, Sanjanati is basically the sensory perception. Now, Vijanati is translated as a cognition. Vijanati, something you do from your consciousness. And then we have Panya. Now, we know that in the Abhidharma analysis, Panya is given as, some experts' knowledge about coin. But what about Sila, Samadhi, Panya? Is that the same thing? In Sila, Samadhi, Panya, what is Panya? It's completely different, right? Sila, Samadhi, Panya is different. Now you can see that in the Buddhist tradition, we are using these terms. Actually, these terms are all knowledge indicating terms. Okay? Knowledge indicating terms. So you can see how rich tradition Buddhism has on knowledge. On the one hand, we can say you are just using the word knowledge. But when you go into it, when you examine it, when you go to different contexts, you have to know that all these places don't talk about only one aspect. Maybe perhaps there is some element that goes through all these things. Sanjanati, Vijanati, Pajanati, Parijanati. Maybe all have something common, but there is also very important differences. Are these differences in the degree, like child's knowledge, adult's knowledge, and expert knowledge, or are they completely different from each other? So difference in degree or difference in kind. Difference in kind means difference in knowing many different various things. So on the one hand, you can talk about the difference in degree. But if you talk about the difference in kind, then you are talking about the different types of knowledge. Now, I know that you bump into these concepts every day when you read the discourses, but have you thought about them deeply? That's very interesting, These are some of the things, because I know that, some of you are trying to do your MA, PhD, your graduate studies. if you are doing with the Buddhist text, Buddhist philosophy, this is one aspect, where you can do research. You take a particular concept and you see how it has been used. What are the different nuances and senses? Now, for example, look at the Parijanati. And what is the noun of Parijanati? What is the noun? Like Pajanati Panya, Parijanati? Parinya. Parijanati Parinya. Now, Parinya is in fact different from Sanjanati, Vijanati, Pajanati. What is the difference? Parijanati is always used to refer to the highest knowledge. So when you have Parijanati, you are an Arahant really. You are your final. So we have Parijanati, Jnata Parinya. What is the other one? Tirana, Pahana. Good. So we have Jnata, Tirana, Pahana. So when you come to the Pahana level, you are an Arahant. Now you can see that it's very different from Panya in that sense. Very clear. Now if you look at the text, if you look at all the instances of Parijanati and Parinya, I think my understanding is Parinya gives this basic, the idea of, you are completely, Arahant. But suppose you are looking at all the instances, if you can find that the term has been used also in another sense, that will be a good discovery really, that will be a good. So, you can study how these concepts have been used in the discourses. And then you can come to later things, like you can come to Abhidharma and see how the same concept has been used. Or you can come to the commentaries and see how the same concept has been used. Is there any difference? So we can study a history of a concept. If we are thinking about research. But basically now you can see that in Buddhism we have several concepts denoting knowledge. So, but in those instances, what really knowledge is, something very interesting. It could be different degrees, difference in kind. So we have to really go look at these things. I think in some cases you can see the difference in kind, like in Parinya. In many cases you can see difference in degrees. And also within the discourses themselves, these words have more than one meaning. Sanya is that very elementary knowledge of a child, but Sanya is also your perceptual knowledge, your sensory perception. So, totally different, two different meanings, right? So, it is very important. Simply we can use the word knowledge for all these things. But, that's in a way very generalizing. So, we can use the word knowledge for these things. But then, although we are using one word knowledge for these things, these words have several different meanings, right? So, now if I ask the question, what is knowledge in Buddhism? Can you answer in one sentence? What is knowledge in Buddhism? Can we answer it in one sentence? Anyway, think about it. Now, look at the other category. Sutame, Chintame and Bhavaname Panya. Again, we are talking about Panya. Sometimes the word is used Jnana. So, Sutame, Chintame, Bhavaname Jnana or Sutame, Chintame, Bhavaname Panya. Now, what is Sutame? Sutta, Shruti. Sutta means, it's a knowledge we gather from listening to people, reading books, learnedness. Actually, this Sutame Jnane is quite similar to knowing that, or propositional knowledge we talked about. Sutame Jnana. When we listen to people, of course, this word was used in the ancient sense because main source of knowledge was listening to the people who know. But today, we are more than listening, we are reading books and we are watching and, TV and, that's how we get knowledge. But anyhow, Sutame Jnana is, information, facts. So basically we gather these things, you are considered to be a learned person if you know more facts. right? When you pass 1 degree, you have some level of information about the Dhamma. You pass another degree, you have even more information about the Dhamma. It's like that. Sometimes you know one whole Vinaya Pitaka completely, or 2 Pitakas, maybe entire 3 Pitakas, then you have even more knowledge. So Sutame Jnana. Sutame Jnana. Now, what is Chintame? Chinta means thought. Now, how do you get knowledge from thought or thinking? That's when I'm going to talk about rationalism and empiricism, I will be showing you how this concept has been understood in the general philosophical tradition. But Chintame Jnana is by thinking. But can we think without anything in our mind? Can we think out of nothing? No, we can't think. If our mind is empty, we can't think. But on the other hand, if we have information with us, then we can think through that information, right? Yes. I mean, we have to have something in us in order to think. In other words, when we are talking about thinking, knowledge arising from thought or thinking, actually we are anticipating Sutame Jnana, or some kind of information. When you have some knowledge, some information, and then reflecting on that information is basically Chintame Jnana. In Chintame Jnana, what we do is is through our the thinking. It can be logical thinking. For example, when you do mathematics, you are not thinking about oranges and apples or cities or anything like that, but you are simply dealing with concepts, mathematics. So mathematics is basically Chintame. You are thinking, right? We also use the word abstract. We say 2 plus 2 is 4. But that 2 plus 2 is 4 we get from our general knowledge. But when we say 2 plus 2, that 2 can be anything. Kind of abstract. So the Chintamaya Panya is basically the knowledge we get about the things we already know by thinking. Otherwise, simply by thinking, you can't know things about the world. Simply by thinking, I can't know that there are 10 tables in this room. Right? I have to come and see. But if I know that there are 10 tables in the room, then I know that there are no 11 tables in the room, right? For that, I don't have to come back, right? Okay. And if I know 10 tables are there, then I know that it is less than 100. Again, it's only a matter of thinking, right? So like that, about the things we know, we can think and draw certain other conclusions based on. So these are kind of Chintame. So the Chintame comes from basically thinking about the things we already know. Okay. What about the Bhavana Me Panya? Bhavana means what? Bhavana, what is the meaning of the word Bhavana? Bhavana means development. Develop. Although we use the word meditation, Reverend, meditation doesn't mean bhavana. Meditation means in English language, you think about something deeply. But bhavana is not only thinking, bhavana is developing something. Bhaveti, right? So in the general usage, we say bhavana, then we translate it as meditation. But meditation and bhavana are 2 different things. Because meditation is something you close your eyes and reflect. It's something very close to meditation, is close to Chintame Panya actually. But bhavana means bhaveti means you try to develop. For example, we know that metta bhavana. Metta means, develop something in you, some quality, right? So that is, now what is the knowledge from that? What kind of knowledge are we talking about it? Now, when we say knowledge, we know something about. But what is the bhavanami knowledge? What do we know when we have bhavanami knowledge? Now, if I have sutame knowledge, I know that there are 10 tables in the room. can I know something about like that from Bhavanamaya knowledge? What is the Bhavanamaya knowledge? How do we account for it? What are the examples of Bhavanamaya knowledge? Now, again, you can make use of the knowledge you already know. Now, for example, let me give you one example. Everybody knows. Now, when we talk about when the Buddha became enlightened, what he realized was Ubbe Nivasanusati, Chutupapata, and Asavakke. How did he get these knowledges? Bhavanamaya, right? So when you say Pubbe Nivasanusati, by developing your mind, you get Pubbe Nivasanusati, and then you get some information about your Pubbe Nivasa, earlier homes, where you lived. Pubbe Nivasa. Nivasa means your residence, former residence. So how do you come to know that? By developing your mind. So we can say from Bhavana, we can know certain things. Now, of course, with our eye, we cannot see Pubbe Nivasa. Ordinary people cannot see Pubbe Nivasa. However, if you have a person with developed mind, you can see Pubbe Nivasa. Now, if you see Pubbe Nivasa, you get a lot of information, right? So, in a way, we can say from Bhavanamaya Panya, we can get some information. If I say Pubbe Nivasa, if I'm ordinary person, developed mind, I can see maybe 1,000 birds. But what about the Buddha? Texts say that Buddha could see any number of birds in the samsara, depending because his knowledge is so high. Other Arahants' knowledge can be limited. Dibba Chakku, how other people die and born. That again, information you get from Bhavana. So, there are certain information you can get from Bhavana. But from Maitri Bhavana, what is the information you get? You don't get any information, but you become a better person. Okay. Like Pubbe Nivasa Anusati and all that also we can say that, okay, you become a better person. But of course, there is a very clear information aspect also. But then basically, usually when we talk about meditation, Metta Bhavana, we develop some inner qualities. Okay, now look at it again. What is knowledge? How are we going to answer this question? Now, look at, when you look at in Buddhism alone, you have Sanya, Vijnana, Panya, and also Parinya. And you have Sutame, Chintame, and Bhavaname. Now, interesting thing is, can you see how rich, how complex the concept of knowledge in Buddhism? Because, in Buddhism, this Panya aspect, Panya, Jnana, is something very important. Because Panyaya Parisujjati, you become purified through Panya. So, Panya is the means to attain Nirvana, realization. So, Panya is so important in the Buddhist tradition. Okay? Now, therefore, actually, we can do quite a lot of research about this whole concept of knowledge, Panya, Jnana. Now, when the Buddha made his first sermon, he described it as Chakhung Udapadi, Jnanang Udapadi, Panya Udapadi, Vijja, Aloko. Now, Chakhu, Jnana, Panya, Vijja, Aloka. What are these things? Chakhu means does not hear this eye, but Chakhu means the vision. Jnanang, Panya, Vijja. Now, Panya means per Jna. Vijja means with. Root is with also to know. Jna to know, with to know. So, knowledge. Aloko, light means, of course, you need light even if you have eyes. So, light. Now, all this shows that, so ultimately, again, let me ask this question, what is knowledge? So one thing we can know is we cannot have a very simple answer, okay, this is knowledge. No, it's a complex thing. It has many uses. Now one example would be to take just Buddhist tradition. In the Buddhist tradition, jnana, panya is something, very interesting, complex, variegated thing. Okay. Maybe perhaps we can take a short break, but before that, do you have any questions or comments or anything? Yes.
You explain what is knowledge. I want to know what kinds of different knowledge and wisdom. As the first question.
Knowledge and wisdom, okay.
Yeah, another question. In the world, different scholars and different people. What kinds of people, what kinds of scholars we can call knowledge person and wisdom person?
What kind of scholars we can?
We can call. So different people, different scholars in the world.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds? So different people, different scholars. What kinds of people, what kinds of scholars we can call? We can call scholars
with knowledge.
Knowledge person and scholars person.
Okay. Yeah, I think your two questions are connected, but interesting question. The knowledge and wisdom, and then also who are the people who are learned people and who are, the different. In fact, if we talk about knowledge and wisdom, now in English language, these two are used in a quite fairly clear-cut difference manner. But when you go to Buddhist tradition, like if you take Chintame, Sutame, Chintame, Bhavaname, you can see that it covers a huge range. But all come under Panya. But then, the English usage, when you say a person has knowledge and person has wisdom, is something like this. A person has knowledge means a person has basically a lot of information. That is what we mean by a person has knowledge. Now we say knowledgeable person. Knowledgeable person is a person knows about things in the world. A medical doctor is a knowledgeable person about health. Lawyer is a knowledgeable person about law. Maybe good Buddhist monk is a knowledgeable person about Dhamma. That means the person has a lot of information, right? And when you get your information, you become a degree holder from a university. However, wisdom, this usage is quite different. A person who has a lot of knowledge is possible that may not have wisdom. And a person who has wisdom may not necessarily have a university degree. For example, like sometimes you take your mother and yourself. Your mother can be a very ordinary woman who is living in a village. And you can be a person who has gone to college and got a degree. But your mother can be a very wise person with wisdom. Though she may not be able even to write her name. Right? And then we have that kind of stories in the Buddhist literature, right? I mean, all those people who became arahants, are they very well educated? No. They were totally uneducated people who became arahant. Very ordinary women became arahant. But in ancient India, women hardly had any formal education. Men had, Brahmin particularly had. But then women became arahant. That means women became very wise. But does that mean that they are educated? So Reverend, it's a good question. The difference is, so wisdom and the wise person is, who has broad attitude, deep understanding, right behavior. So that type of person is a wise person. But a person who has academic degrees is an educated person. Same thing with your second question. So, in our day-to-day language, we say educated people. Educated person is basically what we mean by college degree or something like that. But then scholars are basically experts in a particular subject. But again, so I mean, we use this in a professional sense, Reverend. Professional sense. Now, professional sense means you can't be a medical practitioner unless you have a medical degree, right? You can't be a practicing lawyer unless you have, Same thing can be done. You can't be a Dhamma preacher unless you have a degree, we can say. That means you are doing a professional job. Anybody and everybody can't be a Dhamma preachers, right? Or Dhamma teachers. To be a Dhamma teacher, you have to have a professional training. So this is the basic meaning we are using education, As a university teacher, I'm a professional in my subject, in the sense, I got the professional training in that. So I have a license to do my work, something like that. But basic education, wisdom, broad-mindedness, good behavior, those are different. Very educated person can be also a wise person, but that person may not be a wise person. That possibility is also there. So wisdom and these things. So yeah, and then I think in Buddhist analysis, Sutame, Chintame, Bhavaname, you get these three things together. When you say Bhavaname, I think we are talking about a wise person. But when we are talking about Sutame and Chintame, we are talking about basically educated people. Okay, why don't we take a short break of 5 minutes and then get there. Okay.